Hello, Rachel here. Welcome to my SlowTVStitchery. Well, good morning everybody. Thank you for joining me. You will see that I've nearly finished Nefertiti's seat. I'm nearly at the coloured border. And I'm basically just making very good progress. It is, of course, still quite speedy here because I've got so much gold, and it's about to get fussy again because there will be so many needles. But for the period when it isn't fussy, I'm going to enjoy just galloping from one side of the picture to the other, always assuming so I can make sense of where I am. So, that one. I've also removed a lot of my away knots, which has tidied it up considerably and makes me feel slightly less frantic every time I come to it, because it's easier to see what's real and what's leftovers. That I think is finished. So we have Bach today, starting off with the Goldbergs played by David Wright. After that I can't remember quite what I've got ready to roll, but it does rather depend on how much progress I make, how quickly. I have, of course, still quite a lot to do here. And a lot of thinking to do about how I put the Imana project together, how some of the pieces should be displayed. But I keep on having little thoughts about my next epic project. And at the moment I have a choice of two, although I may very well be beginning to have another set of ideas. And it's very distracting when you know that it's going to be a few months yet before you can start. Although I got the calico for the background for Placidus about 3 years ago. I'm not quite sure what more than that, 5 years ago. Having optimistic thoughts that I was nearly in a position to get started, and then realised that I didn't have a very clear idea of what precisely I was going to do or how. And it's always a good idea to have at least an idea of how you're going to do something before you start. Or at least one of my problems with Placidus is working out how to put the whole thing together, because my conception of it is of a panel which will be about 4 feet by 5. And even if I had somewhere to work that I could put up a frame that size, I wouldn't be able to reach the middle. So the assembly of that one is going to be an interesting challenge, and I still haven't got that fathomed. I think I read somewhere about one of the Impressionists digging a trench into which he put his easel, or at least his canvas, so that he could reach the very top of it, which was otherwise, it was otherwise too big for him to paint. And I'm not quite sure how to extend that idea for embroidery. Or indeed if that's the way to do it. But in an ordinary domestic setting, putting a foot-deep trench in the floor is not usually recommended, so that's not going to be the way to do it. must admit that although sometimes I feel I should have used a finer gold thread in order to get a greater resolution, the idea of working all this in a finer thread does rather give me the heebie-jeebies. It would have needed, well, depending on how fine, I might be less than halfway there by now. And although I do enjoy the challenge, there's only so much or no way one can do in the summer without going cross-eyed and slightly blinded at the glint. Except on a day like this, which is more like autumn. Definitely not this row, and I think not the next, although it's a little hard to tell. Line of best fit. Another couple of rows maybe, and then I'll be into the border. I've realised that this bottom row is bottom edge is sagging. I'm not sure whether this is going to cause me problems later. I may be covering the edge up, although the broken edge is quite archaeological, I suppose. So, yes, I'm not sure about that. I'm not quite sure how to make best use of what I've stitched. But in any case, what I'm going to do is try and pull it back a little. And then if I cover the edge, I will have less to try to conceal. And if I don't cover the edge, there'll be a little bit less variability and it will be easier to make it look meant. And 90% of the trick of what I might call slightly improvisational design, evolutionary design, something like that, is taking the good idea that you have halfway into the project and making it look as though it was what you had in mind all along. And I've managed to do that in the past quite successfully, so I have some hope of pulling it off here. If only I could have the idea. But we will get there. After all, 4 months, 5 months of stitching, it's bound to turn into something, isn't it? Oh, that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed following along. Happy stitching!